Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits, and a very happy birthday to the Duke of Kent, who turned 88 this week. Many happy returns to him and to any of you who are celebrating, and also to Glynis Johns. Do you remember Glynis Johns, the wonderful actress from Mary Poppins, best known for 1964? She was Winifred Banks, Mrs. Banks. Wonderful job she did, perfectly cast movie, wasn't it, Mary Poppins, and lovely to know that she's still going, because I had no idea. She popped up on some news interview and she's just delicious and gorgeous. 100 years old. It was so nice to see her. You know, she thought that the role of Mary Poppins was going to her originally. She was summoned for a meeting with Walt Disney, and she thought, oh, well, he wants me as Mary, but it was not to be her jolly holiday, my dear. And she had her nose put a little bit out of joint, but he fed her a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down by drafting in the Sherman Brothers to write a new number just for her in mind, because she was such an established, wonderful actress. She's had a gorgeous, such an amazing career, glittering career, stage, plays, films, you name it. And no OnlyFans, unfortunately, yet. But, if you ask her, she might have a go. And they wrote her the suffragette song, Votes for Women. Sister Suffragette, that's it. And that was something that Meghan Markle could only dream of, wasn't it? The Duchess of Sussex, she thinks that she invented Votes for Women. She thinks that she is chief suffragette, if you listen to the archetypes thing, if you went through all of that, and then you'll know that is how she's pigeonholed herself. Perish the thought, my dear. Nobody wants to pigeonhole her. But, that is how she brandishes her brand, and no one really falls for it. So, some lovely birthdays there. And I'll speak about the milk and honey moment a bit later on in the broadcast, by the way, and the small pleasures of life, because I've been thinking about them, as I often do, my dear. So we'll draw on that later. I had a comment from Evelyn Campbell, who said, my grandson is the coach of the England Wheelchair Rugby League. It was lovely to see a photo of him with the Princess of Wales from last week, when she was out working. Well, that was very nice to get your comment, my dear. Now, I'm assuming that your grandson would be Tom Coyd MBE, who is the head coach of the team, or perhaps it could have been some other coach as part of the team, but that's lovely to know that you are among the fruit basket here, my dear. Thank you, Evelyn Campbell, and lovely that your grandson got to hang out with Kate. As for the Duchess of Sussex, Queen of the Selfie, she's been back impressing her hordes of fans, including the broadcaster Jen Sue, who apparently is rather big in South Africa. She said, I landed in LA and on our way to dinner we ran into Meghan Markle. Oh, totally low-key and super friendly. Nice conversation. Inane conversation, I bet that's what it was, my dear. Inane. She was with her chums, Melissa and Madison Leonard, who are a Philadelphia influencer and daughter. Curiouser and curiouser. Meghan apparently has been conducting her business meetings. She has a schedule to attend to. As an executive who tells you what's key in the boardroom, she is wanted there. Pour me a glass of water with ice and bring it to me in a special tankard. She's been conducting meetings at Regent Beverly Wilshire. Oh no, that was Pretty Woman, wasn't it, my dear? We know what kind of business she was conducting. Not that I would place that on Meghan's remit. No, it wasn't the Wilshire, it was the Beverly Hills Hotel, because it's near to Big Willie. The other Big Willie, we know which one she'd like to get her hands on, but we're talking about the one she endeavours with at the moment. William Morris Endeavour. No, he might be a big name, he might be a very successful William, my dear, but there is only one big dilly? What the dillio, what the drillio. If you want to battle me, let me know. Sorry, I digress. Getting some lyrics. Missy Elliott coming up. What rhymes with dilly? Oh yeah, Willie. There's only one big Willie, and you ain't getting your hands on it because Catherine's all over it. Now, there was also a clip shown from the Invictus seminar. Thought that was all over for 1 year? No, think again. She visited the Fisher House Foundation in LA, a charity that provides homes for military families. Very nice, very nice. She was wearing striped Ralph Lauren. I actually thought it looked okay. She wore that top before with Catherine to the tennis. And of course she was doing her best Diana, Princess of Wales impression, wasn't she? Embracing everyone, let me hug you. They seemed very grateful to receive her hugs. I'm sure it's all very nice, and I'm sure it's all a worthy cause, but what exactly are they grateful for? Or I should say, why does it put in the imagery of, holding on to some great martyr of salvation? This is what it is. This is what it is. The peasants and paupers for the Duchess of Sussex, they just keep showing their gratitude, don't they, my dear? Keep showing their gratitude. Oh. Fruits of Australia, you might be in for a little treat next year, especially if you're based around Sydney, because royal aides have been preparing for a visit to Sydney to coincide with the King's first attendance as head of the Commonwealth at its summit meeting in Samoa. And this is going to be due next year, about a year from now, in October, Samoa. And it's predicted that that tour is going to be extended onwards to Australia, New Zealand and Fiji. And it obviously is going to inspire conversations about the Republic. We know that many people are demanding that Charles be removed as head of state. It's coming from lots of quarters, especially from the young. But on the other end of the lollipop, the good tasting end, if you ask me, on the other end of the lollipop, there are also calls for the Crown to continue. Someone in the know was saying there is renewed enthusiasm for the Crown in many places, because all what you've seen over the past year, yes, everybody misses the late Queen, but it's also reignited the imagination for those who would be drawn to the pomp and circumstance, and also just the good work and the goodwill that the Crown and the monarchy provides. But the King ain't gonna battle for it. He ain't gonna battle for it, my dear. He will just go about doing his business with soft power and diplomacy, as they all do. And people can dip into it or not. Take their pick. There's no skin off the King's nose. And he'll be off to Kenya anyway, because he's got his first trip to a Commonwealth country coming up, and that should be confirmed over the next few days. And the household of the Prince and Princess of Wales goes from strength to strength. If whispers are to be believed, Dame Pippa Harris has been appointed as a director of the Prince and Princess of Wales's Royal Foundation. And she's also a director of the Memorial Fund, the Diana Memorial Fund Trustee Committee. She founded Neal Street Productions together with Sam Mendes, and they produced many acclaimed film and television moments that you all know. She knows what's what. She's chairperson at BAFTA, and William is also patron. And by the way, the Royal Foundation bloomed and blossomed after the Sussexes left, because Sussex admirers were saying it's all going to go to pot after they go. They were the ones drumming up the interest and making it rather sexy. Well, do you know, their last year when they were associated with it, it brought in £7 million. After that year, it doubled immediately to 12 million. We can do without you! Prince William has also been promoting the Earthshot Prize book. This is rather exciting. The Handbook for Dreamers and Thinkers. And don't you think it looks a little bit more useful than the Sussex offering of The Stench, that poem that nobody wants to read, let alone young children? This is real solutions to repair our planet, inspiring young people to become the change makers of the future. And Prince William was discussing tyre pollution. It's, one of those topics that goes over the head. Did you know about tyre pollution? Did you know that the dust from tyres, you probably did, my dear, it's probably just me that didn't know, but the dust, there'll be some peasant or pauper out there like me that doesn't know these things. The dust from tyres of the cars worldwide in a year produces 6 million tonnes of tyre dust each year. Dust, particles, 6 million tonnes in the air and the atmosphere and the oceans. And I bring that especially to your attention because one of the Earthshot finalists has been developing solutions for cars to run on tyres that don't produce this kind of dust that we're breathing in and ingesting. Apparently you find it in the deepest parts of the ocean and the highest parts of the heavens. Who knows? But it's, doesn't bear think. I can't listen to all that stuff for too long, my dear. It puts your head in a spin, doesn't it, when you think about what's in all the rivers and streams and what's been going on since the Industrial Revolution over the centuries. But William is looking for solutions, of course. And isn't it a wonderful contrast to his brother, who will lecture everyone for getting about on private aircraft and making everybody write great big green itineraries on his enterprises, while behaving like a complete and utter hypocrite and doing very little that's causing real change. And William goes about it quietly, soberly, without condescending, without demanding, without claiming to be oh so holier than thou, and without making false promises. That's how you do it as a real prince. You do it with an elegant, discreet gusto. And if your name's Zara, you do it with Musto, because she's been promoting the brand Musto. She's been undergoing a fashion collaboration with that outdoor brand. And that brand has been, in the past, granted with 2 royal warrants. And she has been an ambassador for the brand for many years, actually. 16 of them, so it's nothing new. And the photographs are really gorgeous, aren't they? Zara looks lovely. She's a fabulous model. And she's all cosy there in her merino long quilted jacket in Windsor wine, and a black rain jacket. The British ambassador to Spain presented the mayor of Seville with jars of marmalade, delicious, that he had made himself with oranges from a 500-year-old tree found in the gardens of the Alcazar Royal Palace. This is a modern twist on an old tradition when there was a custom of sending oranges from the Alcazar to the British royal family. It began when Queen Victoria's granddaughter, Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg, married King Alfonso XIII of Spain in 1908. And actually, I think I read today that they're making a sort of Spanish version of The Crown, or inspired by The Crown, featuring that relationship between Princess Victoria Eugenie and King Alfonso. As patron of the Scottish Rugby Union, Princess Anne attended a Rugby World Cup match at the Stade de France in Paris. Scotland took on Ireland, but lost. The Princess Royal was wearing a purple necktie affair and a brooch, which looked rather like a large brass serving plate of some kind, didn't it? And the scarf was bright yellow and blue tartan. The Mapelli Mozzis have been partying again at Raffles. They love that Raffles Hotel, don't they? It was for the Art of Wishes Gala, and she was wearing a lovely blue lace dress, one of the palest blues there, isn't it, with little mauvey undertones. She wore high heels and toted a clutch, and she also clutched her husband. Actually, I didn't much care for that clutch bag, and I didn't much care for his shoes, or loafers, or whatever they were. They didn't create quite a harmonious impression for me. But her earrings got my approval. I thought they were rather delicious. But that clutch bag, you have to be very careful with clutch bags. If they don't look obviously like a clutch, and they can be mistaken for a wash bag, I find. It looks like, you could be scurrying out between chambers at a Travelodge hotel or something, or the Holiday Inn, scuttling about with your wash bag from room to room. So you have to be very careful. So I'm afraid, it wasn't a particularly hideous clutch bag for Princess Beatrice this time, but it did give off that impression. So be careful there, my dear. Not mad keen. The Duchess of Edinburgh has been spreading goodwill in Ethiopia. She's been all over the place. And she was in Tigray to see how UNICEF is responding to the devastating, far-reaching impact of conflict-related violence and gender-based violence. She wore a dress in electric blue scattered with wild flowers, and she met with victims. She saw how they are rebuilding their lives. She is in Ethiopia as Global Ambassador for the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness, celebrating the transformative work of eye care charities. And Prince Edward, as patron of Badminton Scotland, attended the Scottish Open Badminton International in Glasgow, where he met young leaders. I shared the little montage of me making up some milk and honey with you because I made it for myself the first time last week. You know that I'm very much into the philosophy of small pleasures being the greatest pleasures, or at least the ones that you can rely on the most. When you devote time cultivating small pleasures, which expends very little energy, it can really illuminate your world to find joy and pleasure in the small things. I think it's something that we see less and less in the world, and is something that I want to encourage as much as I can, because even if only one or two of you are inspired by it, then it's rewarding. I broached on this sort of topic in the past, and it's nothing deep or profound or anything like that, but it's just a little way to bring out something in every day, because we are living in this era of the information highway and everything is going at speed and you don't know which way to look. And to be honest, in the last few weeks actually, I found myself overwhelmed, not knowing where to look. And I'm usually and generally quite good at this, being able to restore myself within a very busy lifestyle. I'm quite good at setting those boundaries, but I have found it challenging because there are, as well as one's work life and social life and romantic life, separate from all of that, we have so many diversions online, various news sources that look at, we want to digest what's going on in the world, politics. Then we have the creative, cultural side of our lives. As you know, I enjoy reading from time to time and feel guilty because one leaves so many books half read all over the place. It seems to become rarer and rarer that I get through the entire thing, which leaves me with a sense of guilt. But last week, I really made a concerted effort to start being mindful. And perhaps subconsciously I've put it off for the harvest season because, I tend to work with the seasons and be inspired by the seasons. And I think this time of year is particularly good for me to work with the elements we are reaping at this time of year, aren't we, my dear? The autumn, the harvest, the fall, we are reaping what we've sown, but also taking time to nurture and to nourish before the winter sets in. This is the way that I see it. So I take those autumn evenings to perhaps cancel the odd engagement or put time aside to do nothing, if you will, but to use the time constructively. And one thing that I love to do, which will help you if you do it too, make you feel as if you are not wasting your days, is to try every single day, if it comes to your mind, to do something new. Now, I know this isn't a new notion, but I'm not talking about, hand gliding or joining a club or a society or getting a new hobby or any great big grand gesture. I'm talking about a tiny thing. A new taste experience is one, for the sensual pleasures of life. Yesterday, my thing that I wanted to do that I've never done before was to go into McDonald's and try a fillet of fish, or fillet of fish, I'm not even sure. I've never tried one, and I've heard about them all my life. I've eaten McDonald's, it's something I do very rarely now, but I'll usually have a cheeseburger, or when I was a child I quite enjoyed the chicken burgers, what are they called? McChicken sandwich. That was my thing. But I never tried fish. I'm not a great lover of seafood, especially if it looks like, I'm one of those that get squeamish if it actually still looks like the creature. They have to look very, I can just about bear fish fingers, but and it was a bit like fish fingers, wasn't it? This fillet of fish. A bit like fish fingers, but not as good. I have to say, I wasn't blown away because I've been told recently by somebody who said, "You've never tried it? Oh, you've got to. It's wonderful. It's a taste sensation." Well, it was okay. I think if I was ravenously hungry, I'd get something out of it, but I do prefer the chicken or the cheeseburgers. But I tried it for the first time in my life. It was a new thing. I can say that I know what it's like, and it just brought something new to the day. As I said, just tiny little things. The milk and honey was something that I have never, ever tried. I used to frequent a bar in Soho called Milk and Honey, and I've had cocktails called Milk and Honey. I've ordered fragrances that feature milk and honey as their inspiration, but I've never had it. I'm not quite sure who drinks milk and honey. I mean, I did lots of Googling before I made my own. But what appealed to me and what I wanted to share with you is the simple sort of wholesomeness of taking 3 everyday ingredients. I don't drink milk much these days, to be honest, because it clogs up my pores and my skin and it's not good for me. But as an occasional, fair enough. Milk, honey, and in my case, grated nutmeg. And for me, it was making it up was wonderful. The smell of the nutmeg as you're grating it, it sends you off somewhere, my dear. And then trying it for the first time, and I wasn't expecting to love it. I absolutely adore it, milk and honey. And it's so much more healthier than some of the more sugary treats out there as well. well, I'm not going to be having it every night, maybe 2 or 3 times per year in the autumn season, but it's a wonderful thing to curl up with and get cozy with. It's sweet. I prefer it not too sweet, but you can add the honey to taste. And it's about a novel experience rather than a great adventure. And then you can, I was talking about Garbo recently, Greta Garbo. I think I'd only seen one of her movies before. Well, a few of you recommended some Greta Garbo pictures for me to look at, and I took your advice. I rewatched Camille, I watched Ninochka, I watched Anna Karenina. They're all available on YouTube, by the way. Sometimes you have to rent them and pay a little extra. Queen Christina, I watched A Woman of Affairs, and I've got a few lined up. I think A Woman of Affairs, I think that was a silent one, and it was the first silent movie that I remember ever watching from beginning to end. That might surprise you. I'm a lover of old movies, but not so much the silent ones. I never really got into them because there are so many talkies available. But perhaps for the first time, I sat down and enjoyed a silent movie. And it was interesting for me to see how the sort of melodramatic looks of the era came into vogue because they were required, because nobody was talking. And, I went off and read some articles. I learned about some of the actors in those movies. I think in Woman of Affairs, one of them was Douglas Fairbanks. But so many actors of that era that I know of and that went on to work in some of the talkies. That's where I recognised a lot of them from. But that brought something to me. Then I pulled out a book that's been in my bookcase for a long time. I think I showed it to you when I acquired it in a tip jar corner. I think Beethoven and Destiny. And I didn't want to challenge myself to read the entire thing, but I put on some Beethoven pieces that I'd never heard before. I made a sort of vespertine moment of it. Put on some pieces I hadn't heard of before and looked at some of the things that inspired him and this kind of thing and learned something new there. And I think this time of year is so good for taking inspiration from those small moments and not even challenging yourself to, improve yourself intellectually or physically or be too stimulated. We're talking about, the milk and honey moment sums it up. Just something so simple that's always been in front of you. 3 simple ingredients. Throw it together and enjoy a new experience. And that is something I will always do now through my life. In October, November time, I will take the time to treat myself to milk and honey. I'm probably not being as eloquent on this subject as I meant to be today, so forgive me if it sounds like I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but what I'm trying to let you know what I do on these sort of escapades of the mind. And as you know, something that gives me great pleasure is the trinkets and bric-a-brac and baubles that I find at charity shops, vintage shops, junk sales, whatever it is. And with that in mind, I wanted to ask if any of you were following the Robert Kime auction that took place in the last few days via Duet Auctioneers. Did you follow it? Did any of you bid? Did any of you win anything? I would love to know. I'd be intrigued to know in the comments. Robert Kime was a friend of the King's, a friend of everybody's, a wonderful, I don't think he liked the expression interior designer, but a collector of things. I think he called himself at some point a collector of colours, which is wonderful, isn't it? An accumulator of objets from all over the world, and had a knack and an eye of putting it all together in an exquisite style, widely admired. It really is delicious. I would encourage you to look on YouTube at the videos with Robert Kime on YouTube, Kime. There are a few interviews, people looking around his various homes. I mean, absolutely beautiful. Well, he died, as I say, he was a friend of the King's, and he had various houses here and abroad, and the contents were all sold in the last week. And everybody's been clamouring to get their hands on something that he owned and acquired. Well, everything went for over its estimate by quite a long way. Things went into the hundreds of thousands for various pieces. And I had been sort of following along because I wanted something. And I think I was being a little bit naive about this. I knew that it was going to be a popular auction, but I thought there was a piece by Sarah Chatto under Sarah Armstrong Jones, Princess Margaret's daughter. There was an art piece by her, and we've been talking about her lately, didn't we, in my video about her children? Well, there was a piece by her, and I loved it because it had been framed, presumably by Robert Kime, in a beautiful frame that I really enjoyed, that really made the piece. And the estimate was £300 to £400. Now, I didn't want to spend that especially, but I thought, well, it might go under the radar. Perhaps people will want to spend their money on the other stuff. She doesn't sell for very much, to be quite honest with you. So I thought, well, if no one else is interested, maybe I'll be able to pop in and pick it up for a bargain. Well, of course, as soon as I saw all the bids coming in, I realised that it was going to go for quite a lot more than its estimate, which it did, so it was out of the question for me. Congratulations if you got your hands on it, my dear. And there was a few more by her, and I think one by her hubby as well. But so I switched off. And actually, earlier today, I saw that the Prince and Princess of Wales had been to view the collection before it went up for auction. So they might have put in some mystery bids. In fact, I would be absolutely astonished if they didn't bid on anything. Perhaps they bid on the Chateau piece, who knows? But I did, in all honesty, when I saw that I couldn't afford to bid on the Chateau piece. I did get a little moment of envy, which I don't usually do. And I had to restore myself by thinking about the small pleasure items that surround me. A pink standing lampshade that I found at a junk shop, which brings me millions of pounds worth of pleasure. The silvery grey velvet chair that I showed you in a tip jar corner that I found for, I think it was £15, £15 or £25, which is so gorgeous, so beautiful, so desirable for such a very, very small little amount. Now, there were similar chairs, not actually as nice looking, and I really mean that because I can see the difference between tat and non-tat. But there were similar chairs coming up in this Robert Kime auction, and because it's passed through his hands, Robert Kime with the grand eye, they were selling for multiple thousands. It was going up to, rich people think nothing at all, do they, my dear, of adding on an extra 20 or 30 grand for these things. But it really does make you think about what it is that gives a piece its value, its provenance, I suppose. Well, for me, with my little vintage boudoir chair, it is the fact that I found it, that I discovered it, and I leapt in there before anybody else, and I got it for a great price. If I'd have found that silver chair going up on auction for, £2,000, and then bid in some kind of bidding war until it went up to 10 grand, well, it wouldn't fill me with so much of a sort of secret joy whenever I pop my rear end onto it. I encourage you to be led home to your whimsical heart and find the delights, the moments of indulgence, and the milk and honey that tastes good to you. And with that, I'm going to sup what tastes extremely good to me. The smell of that nutmeg is quite something else, my dears.